the invisible game you didn't know you were playing. Have you noticed how some people, those who often seem the least profound, the least introspective, the most performative, rise to the top of our social hierarchies, dominate global platforms, and attract an almost gravitational level of attention? It's easy to dismiss this as mere luck or the randomness of popularity. But what if I told you there's a hidden system, an invisible architecture designed almost perfectly to reward the shallow? I don't say this with cynicism, but with clarity. Think of it as a machine. Not one built by conspiracy, but by unconscious preference. A system that, like gravity, pulls us toward ease, simplicity, entertainment, and the illusion of depth. And once you start seeing it, you can't unsee it. I've lived inside this system. I've broken it, used it, and watched it rebuild itself again and again. And now, I want to take you with me to deconstruct it. Let's start with attention, because attention is the currency of this world. Not money, not talent, not even intelligence. Attention. And shallow content, whether it's a 7-second video or a viral catchphrase, is engineered with one goal: to hijack your attention with the least resistance possible. It's fast food for the mind. It doesn't nourish, but it satisfies just enough to keep you coming back. And here's the paradox: the deeper the idea, the more effort it takes to digest. And in a system that rewards speed and scale, effort is a liability. So when you see someone rise to fame for something surface level, you're not seeing failure in the system, you're seeing the system working exactly as designed. But pause for a moment and ask yourself, how much of what I consume is designed to make me think versus designed to make me scroll?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
We're all complicit in this. I am. You are. We reward the shallow with our likes, views, and shares. Every click is a vote, every scroll a signal, and the system listens. The algorithm is not an evil god, it's just a mirror. It reflects back what we reward, and when we reward the shallow, we create an ecosystem where depth becomes endangered. But what does this say about us? About the values we express with our time, our attention, our curiosity? Are we addicted to being distracted? Or are we afraid of what we might find if we actually stopped and thought deeply? Here's the uncomfortable question: is the rise of superficial success a reflection of shallow people, or of a shallow society? Let me tell you something that might shock you. I've played this game. I've tested thumbnails, titles, retention curves. I've crafted content engineered to go viral, and I've seen how easily the shallow wins. But I've also tried to sneak meaning into the noise. I've wrapped depth in entertainment. I've hidden philosophy inside spectacle. And here's what I've learned: if you want the masses to hear something profound, you can't shout it from a mountaintop. You have to whisper it through a meme. The system doesn't reward wisdom, it rewards packaging. And so the wise must become magicians. We must disguise truth in the clothing of trend. But how much truth can survive that journey? At what point does the costume become the content? There's a biological element at play too. Our minds evolved to respond to novelty, shock, pleasure. That's why shallow content works. It taps directly into those primal circuits. Meanwhile, depth requires abstraction, delayed gratification, and discomfort. It's the intellectual equivalent of eating vegetables in a world of candy. So the system isn't just technological, it's psychological. And unless we rewire our desires, we will always be drawn toward the easy, the fast, the loud. Ask yourself, when was the last time you voluntarily sat with a difficult idea for more than 5 minutes? Not because you had to, but because you wanted to? That's the frontier of freedom, choosing meaning over stimulation. But here's where it gets existential. Because if the system rewards the shallow, then what does that mean for those who seek depth? Are we doomed to obscurity, or is there another path? I believe there is, but it requires a radical shift in how we measure value. Instead of applause, we must seek resonance. Instead of reach, we must seek impact. Instead of being seen by millions, we must aim to change the inner world of a few. Because depth moves slowly, but it moves deeply. Like water, it carves through rock not with force, but with patience. And in a world obsessed with virality, patience is a superpower. So I ask you now, would you rather be briefly famous to millions or unforgettable to a few? Ultimately, the system that makes the shallow succeed is not an enemy to fight, it's a landscape to navigate. It's the ocean, and we must learn to sail. Some will ride the surface forever, skipping across waves. But others, perhaps you will learn to dive, and to find the currents below. To hold your breath long enough to touch something real. And when you come back up, you might not have the biggest audience, but you'll have something they don't. Depth, soul, substance. And maybe, just maybe, that's the beginning of a new kind of success, one the system can't measure, but the human spirit can feel. The mirror of mediocrity, why depth is silenced and shiny lies rise. Let's take a step deeper. If the first truth is that the system rewards the shallow, the next truth is even stranger. Depth often hides itself in plain sight. Like a philosopher in a clown costume, true insight is often camouflaged in entertainment, irony, or absurdity. Why? Because raw, unfiltered wisdom is often too intense, too confronting, too real. It doesn't perform well at dinner parties or on timelines. So depth learns to wear a mask. It enters the system disguised as humor, as art, as story. And if you're not paying attention, you'll miss it. You'll scroll past the sacred thinking it's just another joke. The architecture of illusion doesn't just elevate the shallow, it obscures the profound. But this illusion isn't accidental, it's structural. Think about it, our digital platforms are built on metrics, clicks, likes, shares, watch time. These are not measures of truth or value, they are measures of reaction. And the easiest way to provoke reaction is through extremes: controversy, beauty, novelty, anger, simplicity. But wisdom is rarely extreme. It is balanced. It is nuanced. It refuses to speak in absolutes. And so it doesn't trigger the same metrics. It doesn't provoke the same reaction. It doesn't perform. In a world built to reward spectacle, subtlety becomes a ghost. And yet subtlety is where reality lives. So here's the haunting question. How much of what we call reality is simply what performs best in the algorithm? This is where the illusion becomes dangerous. Because when we mistake performance for truth, we begin to shape ourselves around what gets rewarded. We flatten ourselves, we simplify our ideas. We become characters in our own lives, optimized not for authenticity, but for consumption. Even our pain becomes content. Even our healing becomes aesthetic. And in this performance of life, we lose the very thing that made us human: contradiction, complexity, silence. We are not shallow people by nature, we are deep beings living in a shallow medium. But the medium is changing us, slowly, invisibly. And unless we become conscious of the performance, we risk forgetting who we actually are beneath it. I've seen this happen to creators, thinkers, even philosophers. People who began with real questions, real depth, but the system pushed them to simplify, to repeat, to become brandable. And so their wisdom shrank to sound bites. Their originality collapsed into formulas. And it worked. They grew. They succeeded. But something sacred was lost. And the tragedy is this: the audience doesn't even know what they missed. Because if all you've ever eaten is candy, you don't miss the taste of fruit. So here's a radical idea. What if the greatest minds of our time are invisible to us because they refuse to perform? But here's the twist. Some of the deepest thinkers have realized this trap, and they've learned to play the game without losing themselves. They use the system like a Trojan horse. They hide philosophy in comedy. They bury truth in spectacle. They dance on the surface while whispering to those who know how to listen. And if you look closely, you'll find them. They're the ones who make you laugh, then suddenly make you cry. They're the ones whose content lingers in your mind long after the dopamine fades. They are the secret sages, the digital mystics. And they prove that it's not impossible to be deep in a shallow world, it's just harder. Much harder. So what does this mean for you? It means that if you want to live deeply, you must learn to see through the illusion. You must develop a kind of philosophical X-ray vision, a way of looking at the world that sees beyond the performance. When someone goes viral, ask not just what did they do, but why did we reward it? When you feel drawn to content, ask what part of me is being fed right now. Is it your mind, your soul, or just your impulse? And when you create, whether it's a post, a conversation, or a life ask, am I expressing truth or just optimizing for attention? These questions won't make you popular, but they will make you real. And here's the final paradox of this part. The system that hides depth also creates the hunger for it. Because deep down we are starving for something real, something slow, something that can't be swiped. And when we find it, even just a glimpse, we feel it. We know it. That's why a single honest conversation can mean more than 100 viral clips. That's why a quiet moment can feel louder than 1,000 reels. The presence of depth, even in a shallow system, is like water in a desert. And once you taste it, everything else feels dry. So maybe we're not doomed after all. Maybe the hidden system can't be destroyed, but it can be subverted. Maybe the shallow win the spotlight, but the deep shape the soul. And maybe, just maybe, the architecture of illusion is not a cage, but a canvas. One where you can paint something honest, something imperfect, something true. The question is, will you? The resurrection of depth, becoming a quiet revolutionary in a loud world. So here we are standing at the edge of the system, peering into its mechanisms, its illusions, its hidden levers. And now the question becomes, what do we do with this knowledge? If we know that the system favors the shallow, if we understand that depth is camouflaged, if we've experienced the hunger for something real, what's next? This is where it gets personal, because the answer isn't to scream louder or to out-shallow the shallow. The answer is to become a quiet revolutionary, to live in such a way that your very existence becomes a rebellion against the system, not by rejecting it entirely, but by using it thoughtfully, by becoming intentional in a world of impulse, by becoming still in a world of noise. Let's talk about power. Not the kind measured in followers or influence, but the power to shape your own life. The power to choose what you pay attention to. The power to take back your mind from a system that wants to hijack it. You don't need to become a monk or delete your apps to do this. You simply need to wake up, to pause before you scroll, to reflect before you share, to ask questions that algorithms can't answer. Here's one: what kind of person is this system trying to turn me into? And do I want to become that? If not, then your life must become a counter message. Your attention must become a protest. Because in this world, attention is loyalty, and where you give it determines what kind of world you help build. This isn't just philosophy, it's survival. Because the more we conform to the system's demands, the more we lose our inner compass. And when we lose that, we become programmable. Not just by tech, but by culture, by trends, by fear. We become reaction machines. But you are not meant to be reactive. You are meant to be reflective. You are not meant to chase every trend, you are meant to choose your path. And that choosing is where depth begins. It begins the moment you decide to live deliberately, to speak slowly, to think carefully, to feel fully. In a world that rewards speed, slowness is revolutionary. In a world that rewards exposure, privacy is sacred. In a world that promotes constant performance, authenticity is radical. Let me share something vulnerable. There were moments even in my own journey where I almost lost myself trying to win. I saw the metrics go up and thought that meant I was doing something right. But sometimes the worst thing that can happen is that you succeed at the wrong thing. Because success has gravity. Once you get it, it pulls on you. It shapes every future decision. And if you're not careful, you start building a life you don't even believe in. A life optimized for applause, not for meaning. And here's what no one tells you: it is possible to be incredibly successful and incredibly empty at the same time. So I had to ask myself, am I building a life that looks good or one that feels true? You can ask yourself the same question right now. What are you optimizing for? Is it numbers or nourishment? Connection or performance? Depth or attention? It's okay if the answer isn't clear yet. Most people never even ask. But the asking itself is power. The asking is where transformation begins. Because asking leads to awareness, and awareness leads to agency. And once you have agency, you can begin to shape your own system, one that rewards depth, that celebrates truth, that honors complexity. You can become the architect of a new way of living. You can become the exception that breaks the rule. And here's the most beautiful part: you won't be alone. There are others, quiet thinkers, subtle artists, hidden philosophers, people who refuse to shrink their souls to fit the frame of a trend. And when you live with depth, you begin to find them, not through hashtags or algorithms, but through resonance. You'll feel it in a conversation, in a book, in a moment of silence shared between two people who don't need to perform. You'll begin to build your own invisible tribe, those who care more about truth than image, more about growth than likes, more about meaning than metrics. And together, you become something powerful, not loud, not viral, but real. So maybe this is the hidden truth behind the hidden system, that its very hollowness creates the opportunity for something real to rise. That in its obsession with surface, it accidentally makes us crave substance. And that craving, if you follow it, can lead you back to yourself, to your real self. Not the version you've curated, but the one you've forgotten. The one who still wonders, still feels, still believes that life is more than something you perform. That version of you is not gone. It's just buried. And right now it wants to be found. So here's the challenge I leave you with, the quiet dare. Live deeply in a shallow age. Speak truth even when it's unpopular. Honor silence in a world of noise. Choose meaning over momentum. And when the system tries to flatten you, remember this: you are not here to be efficient. You are here to be alive. And aliveness has no algorithm. Now ask yourself, what is the one truth you've been afraid to live out loud? Find it. Speak it. Live it. That's how we begin to rewrite the system one real life at a time.